Ayubowan. Greetings from Boston. News, views and entertainment from Sri Lankans in Boston and in USA. Jaliya Wickramasuriya, Sri Lankan ambassador in USA, is in Sri Lanka campaigning for Mahinda Rajapaksa, Transparency International says in a report. Warning from International Crisis Group, victory over the LTTE will remain fragile unless Sri Lanka, #1 place in the world to visit, according to the New York Times. Can Sri Lankan expatriates in USA vote in the Sri Lankan elections? According to the Transparency International Sri Lanka, located in Bullers Road, Colombo 7, several ambassadors of Sri Lanka, including the Sri Lankan ambassador in USA, Honorable Jaliya Wickramasuriya, is in Sri Lanka campaigning for the UPFA candidate Mahinda Rajapaksa. Transparency International, in their second report issued on January 10, 2010, with the title Program for Protection of Public Resources, points out that some of these ambassadors are the ones who had been appointed outside the professional foreign service. Sri Lankan embassy spokesperson in USA confirmed that the ambassador is in Sri Lanka but did not comment about what he is doing in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has yet to make significant progress in reconstructing its battered democratic institutions. If not, the victory over the LTTE will remain fragile, says Donald Steinberg, International Crisis Group's Deputy President for Policy. The reforms that Sri Lanka needs, according to Steinberg, include ending emergency rule, establishing the Constitutional Council and independent commissions, depoliticizing the judiciary, preventing everyday police torture and curbing impunity for state offences. Though the election campaign between Rajapaksa and retired General Sarath Fonseca has now opened up some new political space, Sri Lanka has yet to make significant progress in reconstructing its battered democratic institutions or establishing conditions for a stable peace, says the report issued by the Crisis Group. New York Times, one of the most prestigious newspapers in the United States, reports that Sri Lanka is the #1 place it recommends to visit. Sri Lanka hits the top spot out of 31 countries or places published by the New York Times. According to the New York Times, for a quarter century, Sri Lanka seems to have been plagued by misfortune, including a brutal civil war between the Sinhalese-dominated government and a separatist Tamil group. But the conflict finally ended last May, ushering in a more peaceful era for this teardrop-shaped island off India's coast, rich in natural beauty and cultural splendors. The Sri Lankan government sources says that there are well over 1 million Sri Lankans living overseas. The questions have raised why these 1 million people were deprived their right to vote. Many other countries allow their expatriate communities to vote in their national elections. Some Sri Lankan Americans are thinking that it's time that they should also be given the opportunity to vote at elections. Boston Lanka asked Rue Freeman, Sri Lankan-born political activist in USA, for her comments. Rue Freeman, who recently published her first novel, A Disobedient Girl, has been very active in the US politics as well as Sri Lankan issues in USA. Patriots and traitors, words here often in the present presidential campaign in Sri Lanka. We were familiar with the similar sentiments expressed here in USA in the post-9/11. We asked Rue Freeman whether it's fair to characterize people like Ranil Wickremesinghe, Mangala Samaravira as traitors.
I think that these terms, patriot and traitor, are always subjective. They depend on who is using them, who is making the allegation, about whom the allegation is being made, and all this is framed by a particular context. I think what is true is that Mangala Samaravira and Ranil Wickremesinghe were seen as being soft on the LTTE during a critical time in the war. and also that their political activity at the time focused on vilifying or ridiculing the government and the security forces. At the time, it was alleged that the purpose was to destabilize the Rajapaksa government, demoralize the troops, and turn the political equation back in favor of the LTTE. Not because they loved the LTTE, but I think because they loved themselves and their own power more than they loved the country.
Aru, how do you characterize Sarath Fonseca's role now that he is contesting against his own commander-in-chief?
To be honest, I don't think that Sarath Fonseca is genuine about anything that he has said, particularly with regard to abolishing the executive presidency. He said he would, then he said he doesn't want to be a ceremonial president. Now he has dropped the whole issue of abolishing the executive presidency from his manifesto.
We asked Rue Freeman her predictions about the outcome of the presidential elections.
I think Mahinda Rajapaksa is going to win. And I say that without having carried out any surveys. I say it based on my trust in the voting public. Sri Lankans have gone through major trauma during the past 30 years, and specifically the last 5 years between the tsunami and the war against the LTTE. During that time, I think they matured with regard to politicians. And so it comes down to the basics. Mahinda Rajapaksa achieved by fighting the actual enemy, the LTTE, not other politicians, and by refusing to back down to foreign pressure, he achieved what the UNP and the JVP and the PA under Chandrika Kumaratunga could not. Why would any Sri Lankan vote into power those who had failed them repeatedly for so long? I think we have gone beyond that point. I think there are old-time politicians who are trying to dig up a time when people did that sort of stupid thing now, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Sriyantha Mendis, award-winning Sri Lankan actor, is no stranger to Boston. At his last visit, he spoke to Boston Lanka about his new book, Padara Asapuwa Samaga Amerikawata.
අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන්ද ඔබගේ මේ චාරිකාවේ මං හිතන්නේ මේ වසර කීපයකට ඉහතදී ඔබ කරපු චාරිකාවේ අත්දැකීම් තමයි මං හිතන්නේ මේ පොතට පාදක වෙන්න ඇත්තේ කියලා. අපිට කරුණාකරලා කියන්න පුළුවන්ද මේ පොත ගැන යමක්?
මං හිතන්නේ සුවර්ණ මේක බොහොම විශේෂයි. පාදට අසපුව කියන නාට්‍ය සමග ඇමරිකාවට එන්න දක්වන ලද වෙහෙස සිහිනයක් හැටියට මට දැනෙන්නේ. මේ සිහිනයේදී මේ සිහිනයේ මල්පල ගැන්වෙනකොට මම සතුටින් ඉපිලා ගියා. ඒක ලංකාවට ගියාට පස්සේ ඒ තුටු වූ සතුට පොතක් බවට පරිවර්තනය කරලා ගාන්ත්‍රයක් බවට පරිවර්තනය කරලා මාළද අධ්‍යක්ීම් හපංකම් පුරසාරං සහ මෝඩකම් හැටියට මම සැලකන්නේ මේ කාරණා ඔක්කොම එකතු කරලා පොතක් සම්පාදනය කරන්නට මට අවස්ථාව ලැබුණා. ඇත්තට මේකේ තියෙන බොහොම පැහැදිලි සත්‍ය එදිනෙදා අපිට වෙච්ච දේවල් ටික එය ලංකාවේදී 2008 වර්ෂයේ මම මේ මුද්‍රණයට සැලසුවේ 2008 වර්ෂයේ සැප්තැම්බර් මාසයේ සාහිත්‍ය මාසයේදී. ඉතින් සාහිත්‍ය මාසයේම තමයි මේක දොරට වැදුනේ. දොරට වැදුනේත් ඇත්තටම සුවිශේෂයි. දොරට වැදින්නේ ඇමරිකාවේදී. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඇමරිකාව ගැන වෙනත් රටක ගැන පොතක් සම්පාදනය කරපු පුද්ගලෙක් ඒ රටේදීම නැවත ඒ පොත දොරට වැදීම බොහොම සුවිශේෂයි. ඒක නිසා මට මෙම කෘතිය දොරට වඩන්න අවස්ථාව ලැබුණේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ජනාධිපති මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට. ඒ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට දොරට වඩන්න අවස්ථාව ලැබුණේ ඇමරිකාවේ නිව්යෝක් නගරයේදීමයි.
බට ගෙවල් දෙකක් වගේම ගෑනු දෙන්නෙකුත් ඉන්නවද? හාමුදුරුවනේ මම හිතුවේ උඹ සාමාන්‍ය මිනිහෙක් කියලා. මට මං ගැන පුදුමයි ඔය.
In next news edition, inside the IDP camp in Sri Lanka, eyewitness account. Harvard University, want to study? Looking for the American dream? Is Sarath Fonseca the first presidential candidate holding a US green card seeking to be the next executive president in Sri Lanka? That's all for now. We'll meet you again with a new edition of Boston Lanka. Goodbye.